Sorry for the kind of abrupt shift there. Got a little technological difficulty going here, so let's see if we can get past this. So I've talked about the conditions, the caveats during about this research. Let's get to the bottom line. What we're doing is showing participants either same-sex or opposite-sex photos. The sample is heterosexual. So what we see is when we show people attractive photos, that is attractive same-sex photo, it probably sets up a social comparison process that says, wow, I don't measure up, and my mood diminishes as we see in the first bar here. Whereas if I see an opposite-sex photo that is clearly a 9 or a 10, right, super attractive, then my mood actually increases. Notice the control condition, the average photos, we see no difference at all. And this creates an interesting conversation surrounding the cost and benefit of beauty. We do notice attractiveness does matter in a lot of areas, especially in Hollywood, and we see a young Joan Rivers and an older Joan Rivers, and the desire to maintain one's appearance can often lead to income, jobs, etc. in Hollywood. So people are driven to get a lot of plastic surgery, if you will. The thing is that what we find is that being good looking doesn't guarantee health, happiness, or high self-esteem. So it's an interesting phenomenon. Attractiveness certainly opens up doors, but it's no guarantee to the results we may be seeking. There's attributional problems with being good looking. That is the attention or praise that one receives, right, due to one's talents or just due to one's good looks? And it becomes impossible then to differentiate those in a lot of situations. Did I get hired because I'm talented, or did I get hired just simply because I'm pretty? I deal with that question every day. Well, okay, so maybe not. Maybe I'm hired on the basis of something else besides my appearance. At least I frickin' hope so. Now, having to maintain one's appearance may be the source of anxiety. That is, now I have to worry about it, right? And this is something my mom concerned herself about. And strange thing is, my mom was a casting director, so she was behind the camera, not in front of the camera. But Hollywood puts a premium on attractiveness and youth. So as she began to age, she became increasingly anxious that would she continue to be employed, right? So, but that's Hollywood, but it's not different than a lot of other areas as well. Now, the loss of one's attractiveness may be the source of sadness and sadness, dejection-related emotions, and there's little to do about it. And I think the more that people trade on their appearance and their attractiveness, the more critical this issue might become for some people. So, enough of that. Let's move on to theories of love. And so, for those of you who are taking on the Sternberg approach, right? And we got a homework assignment coming here too. This lecture is actually the nexus of several versions of the paper and a homework assignment. So tell your friends not to miss this one, right? Tell your teammates, tell your colleagues. So here we go. Sternberg's triangular theory of love, and you're going to go much deeper. If you choose this paper topic, remember, I've got Sternberg's paper there, so you're expected to read that paper and understand what's going on. Now, Sternberg looks at love, and he says love is a multifaceted phenomenon. What are the facets? Well, the main types of love, if you will, are passion, intimacy, and commitment. And Sternberg is suggesting then that there are different types of love. And if we combine these three main types of love, then we get more complex types of love as a result. So passion is what you might feel. You see someone and they just really turn your crank, if you want to use that term. They really get you excited, right? You go, oh my God, oh my. And you hear your heart race, your palms sweat, right? The sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear, but it's infatuation, it's passion alone, right? It may be enough to start the pursuit or to start the interest, but it really is not enough necessarily to base any kind of serious relationship on. Now, intimacy is the ability to share. And for those of you who are taking psych of adjustment, you know that we've talked about Erickson recently. And what do we know about Erickson? Erickson tells us there's 8 stages we move through in the lifespan. Many of you are in the stage now as college students, intimacy versus isolation. So you've developed an identity through adolescence, and now that you have an identity, it's time to share it. And intimacy is about sharing, right? And it's something that we can do with our friends, it's something we can do with our lovers or potential lovers, it's something we can do with our family. But intimacy then is this type of love that really kind of personifies what Sternberg calls liking. So infatuation and liking, if we combine those two, and this is where most new relationships start, right, is we have the passion, we have the intimacy, we're staying up all night sharing all the stories about ourselves, right? We build this romantic love, and romantic love is intimacy versus intimacy and passion. Now, as time goes on, right, and we say this is the person for me, then we might have that conversation about monogamy, that the expectation is we will be monogamous, that we will commit to each other and not be involved with other people. So now you can see that the relationship is beginning to shift. It is, in fact, creating a space for commitment. Now, the ultimate relationship, according to Sternberg, is a mix of intimacy, passion, and commitment, right? Kind of in equal doses, and this is then is a long-term committed relationship that enhances our life, right? And that's consummate love. Maybe tough to achieve, and some of you have parents that have got to this point and are still at this point. Some of us have parents where shit fell apart, right, and they got divorced, like me, right? So those are the components. Now down here on the bottom, let's say we have passion and we have commitment. Well, here's a term that many of us probably don't use, is fatuous. So that's fatuous love, right? And that's passion and commitment. So that is, I'm excited by you, and I guess I'm committed to being excited by you. But what are we going to call this? What are some colloquialisms we might use to describe this? Could this be like a booty call? Friends with benefits? See where I'm going with that? Now, Sternberg also suggests that relationships that begin with passion and then, inject intimacy, eventually the commitment takes place and we move over here, but notice as we move over here, we're moving away from the passion angle. So this is companionate love where intimacy and commitment are the driving forces of the relationship. Questions? Now, for your paper, right, those of you who are choosing to take on this paper, I've asked you a couple tough questions, and students often, hi Penelope, have an issue with these questions. That is, what the hell is Mark talking about? And that's fair enough, right? A couple things that I'm asking you is, okay, so what emotions might be present over here? What emotions might be present over here? And if the relationship starts to move, right, from romantic love to companionate love, for example, what is the change in the emotions that predominate in the relationship? So that's one of the questions I ask you to explore. So as we move from one aspect, there's emotions that typify this portion, but there's emotions that typify this portion, but they're not necessarily the same emotions. So I want you to explain that to me. And then we flip the question a little bit, and it gets a little more complex. That is, if I am in this state with you, but I note a change in the emotions that dominate the relationship, could those changes in emotion warn us that the nature of the relationship is changing? So that's kind of part two of that relatively complex question. So there you go. I hope that helps you with your paper. So, Love is a Story, and this is Sternberg's book, right? There's the cover of the book, A New Theory of Relationships. I love the title, Love is a Story, because we define ourselves with a partner or with a family member or the love that we share with one of our pets, right? And yes, of course, I love Penelope. How could we not love Penelope, right? But what is the narrative? What is the story? What is the story that we tell ourselves? What is the story that we're writing as we move through this relationship? So Love is a Story brings us back to this issue of narrative that we've discussed a little earlier, right? And this is why it can be so tough. When Cracker, my familiar, when Cracker died last year, right? There was a narrative that Cracker and I had built over the years. We'd built a story. We'd shared time. And, you know, when someone passes away, when a partner, when a pet, when a parent passes away, someone you love passes away, right? We become acutely aware of the nature of the narrative through the process of loss. We might not consider the narrative consciously on a day-to-day basis. Who are we? What do we mean together? What have we done? Where have we come from? Where are we? Where are we going? That's the narrative of a relationship, right? We become painfully aware of what we've lost, right? When someone passes or when someone leaves. Anyway. So the narrative. Love is a story. Sternberg. For those of you who take on this paper, I hope that helped a little bit. Let's talk some types of love, because we know that it's not a single theory that dominates, you know, a study. There are multiple theorists. Rubin talks about liking as the feeling one has for a platonic friend, right? That is a non-sexual relationship, but the liking contains the intimacy component, and many of you have very close friends, and one of the reasons they're close friends is because you can say anything to them without fear of rejection, reprisal, evaluation, right? So it's an intense intimacy and liking. Loving is the kind of feeling that one has for a romantic partner. Now Elaine Hatfield, right, said companionate love, she describes it as secure, trusting, and stable partnership. And notice companionate love usually takes time to build, so through experience, we'd gain trust with that other person, if all else is going well. Now passionate love to Hatfield, and I think that she is giving us kind of a novel component to passionate love. She agrees, yes, arousal. It's characterized by high arousal, intense attraction, and I don't think Sternberg would disagree, but note that Elaine Hatfield adds on a fear of rejection. And isn't that fascinating? And I want us to look at these two pieces of art. Are you familiar with these pieces of art? Okay. The first one is The Kiss, and this is by Auguste Rodin. Right, so if you go to France, you can go to Paris, you can go to the Rodin Museum. It's a beautiful museum. It's got marble works inside the museum, and then all along the grounds of the outside of the museum, this beautiful gated park, right, you have Rodin's works in bronze, right, including the Thinker, the Gates of Hell, I mean some heavyweight sculptures. Right? And he had a student, Camille Claudel. Well, Camille fell in love with Rodin, and Rodin, you know, was her teacher, her mentor, but Camille came to realize that Rodin was never going to leave his wife and family for her. So her passionate love for Rodin is largely unrequited, and she maybe wasn't treated as well by Rodin as she thought she would be. Well, if The Kiss is Rodin's work, who the hell do you think made the other piece of work? And this is Camille Claudel. And you can see that there is the man being taken away, absolutely inaccessible to the poor woman, and I believe that's Camille with a picture of herself. And we see that art and artists, the creativity to work out these issues, right, and express emotion is fascinating. So good study in emotion usually requires a good study in art, and I want you guys who are doing the paper on art, right, the Desert Island paper, you get 10 pieces of music or art or whatever. I want you to think of it in depth, what the emotions are, what it means, what's going on there, right? And you can see that Camille Claudel was working through some issues there. Now, other theories of love abound. Here you go. Let's have a burger theory of love, and you can take a look at this. I don't know how this will show up on the screen, but there's a burger, and I'll just ketchup, right, is intellectually challenging. The pickle is funny. The tomato passionate. Mayo supportive. The bun physically attractive. So if we're looking at our potential partners, right, and we want to make a comparison, we can construct them as burgers and then determine which would probably be the most satisfying burger, and that will help us make our choice between romantic partners if you're faced with choosing between multiples, right? For those of you lucky enough in that situation. I know. Never mind. So let's move on, right? Let's talk about Lee's love wheel, and this comprises a homework assignment, so be prepared, right? Now, Lee's love wheel what we're looking at is the color wheel of love, and the terminology is fun if nothing else. But what we're looking at is a triangle theory of love that's expanded with a circle around it, and we have three types of primary love, right? And that is eros, ludus, and storge. So let's go take a look at Lee's primary love styles. You like those words? Here we go. Let's define them. Eros, what is it? Notice, we're going, right, ancient languages based on romance. So eros, romance, primary style. This love is most commonly portrayed in Hollywood movies. Love at first sight. It's about chemistry, right, strong physical and or emotional attraction. So eros might be, according to Lee, one of the types of love that we are able to experience, right, under certain circumstances. Now, ludus, right, is about conquest, and it's by those who see love as a game to be played and won, right? And this may then be, if I'm a player, I'm just going out and kind of keeping score on how many conquests I can make, right? The focus is having fun in the moment. Relationships will tend to be very short with this style of love, very temporary, because the game is in the chase and the capture, but not the maintenance, right? Now, storge, or storge, if you will. What do we know about storge? Well, storge is friendship. And this is another primary style. It's the type of love that grows out of friendship, right? And it's based on commitment. So you can see, similar to Sternberg, but certainly the ludus component is probably not part of Sternberg's necessarily. So different researchers, different theorists take different approaches. So let's look at the combined styles then. And if we go back to the wheel, you can see the pragma, mania, agape. Then let's take a look and see what we come up with. Pragma, this is a very practical and realistic love. People who prefer this style approach to their relationship in some kind of business-like fashion look for partners with whom they can share common goals. And many royal marriages in the past, or marriages of people of higher status, of higher wealth, right, were based on combining families and had a very practical approach to it. Countries where arranged marriages are kind of the norm, this might be then pragma, one of the driving forces in this type of love. Now, mania, right, this flows out of low self-esteem or a need to be loved by one's partners. It might be a component of borderline personality disorder or dependent personality disorder, right? Lovers of this sort usually become very possessive and jealous, if you will, and it's about obsession. It's about kind of owning the other person. And then agape is selflessness, and in this type of love, the individual is willing to sacrifice anything for their partner. It's an unbreakable commitment, unconditional, selfless love. I saw an example of this when my mom was in the memory care unit up at Lewis Crossing. I met one man in particular who came and visited his wife. She was struck down by Alzheimer's and other issues at a relatively young age, right, in her, let's say, 60s to late 60s. And here was a professional businesswoman who was very accomplished, and she was now confined to a wheelchair, couldn't speak, not even sure if she knew anything that was going on around her necessarily. And he came, and he's twice a day. It was the most committed thing I'd ever seen. And we would sit there and have dinner with them, my mom and I, and it was just amazing. But it was an absolute, everything in his life kind of really centered around coming to see her and coming to visit her. Very touching and very sad, right? And she has since died, and I've wondered what's happened to him. Was it, ultimately a release and a relief for him, or is he grieving through this? And it's probably some combination of all those things. But agape, so that's selflessness. So your homework number 9, assign emotions to Lee's love style. Below are Lee's 6 love styles. Each team member should assign an emotion to each love style for a total of 18 emotions. Right? No duplicate emotions within a style. So Eros, I want you to assign 3 different emotions. Different styles may have the same emotion assigned. So you can't reuse emotions within a love style, but you can reuse emotions across a love style, if you will. And just a brief explanation, a sentence or two for each assigned emotion. Explain to me what you're thinking about, and you'll have a template in Carmen for homework 9, and it looks like this. Eros, right? And of course it's expanded for all 6 of Lee's love styles, but there's the spaces for the 3 different emotions, and then explanation 1, explanation 2, and explanation 3. And you guys have been doing a good job of working together. I'm super pleased with your participation on teams overall. Yeah, there's a team or two that's been a little shaky or hasn't worked out necessarily extremely well. But let's face it, in this course we have 160 people. We have teams of 4 people. That is like 40 teams, and there's big numbers of successfully operating teams. So you guys are taking it seriously. You're doing well. How you want to identify it, kind of up to you. Okay? And I think this is a logical place to break to part 2. We've got a slide here as a placeholder. So let's stop this and we'll go on to part 3.